Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on some of the key issues and important topics facing our country is Jeffrey Wiesenfeld. Mr. Wiesenfeld is a wealth advisor and principal at AllianceBernstein and spent 20 years as senior aide to a number of public officials, including New York Mayor Ed Koch, New York Governor Ed Pataki, and New York Senator Alphonse D'Amato. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Wiesenfeld.
Welcome back. It must be Wednesday, 6:30, and I'm delighted to be back with my precious cohorts on this podcast. You're the ones that make it exciting and worthwhile. All the ideas you give me and all the ideas that you present where you totally disagree with me, but causes me to rethink my position. So, like somebody once said, you learn more from your students than you do from anything else. So, your notes to me, your criticisms are what helps make this the exciting program that it is. And today I'm fortunate to have one of the superstars of my generation, Jeffrey Wiesenfeld, who was, I knew him when he was liaison, Jewish liaison for George Pataki, and before that, Mayor Koch, and before that, or simultaneous with that, I don't remember exactly when, Al D'Amato. And all of those politicians really looked up to Jeffrey and loved him. And I had the opportunity to interact with Jeffrey because I was pretty active in politics at the time. I got over it because I found that politicians are not the right guys to depend on. That you could depend on them to keep asking for money till they find out you got nothing left in your bank account. So anyway, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have Jeffrey on, and I'm sure he's going to add a lot to the wisdom of you all and myself. And so we're going to get launched in a minute. But before I get into the current events, which unfortunately are always depressing and always leave me disappointed in the kind of progress we're making as human beings and our civilization as human beings. So I wrote this book called Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. How to be happy no matter what. And the reason is because I take God's instruction, which is that each of us is assigned the role to change the world and make it a better place for all humanity. So if I could add joy and happiness and a smile to people every day, and hopefully at some juncture we can all collaborate to make everybody in the world happier, there's no reason why we shouldn't do that instead of always being divisive and argumentative and being at war with each other. It's heartbreaking for me to see that we take young people, and the United States is probably the most guilty of all, taking young people, putting in the military service, have them, train them to kill other young people who might otherwise be their best friends and collaborators in improving the world. And one after the other. The United States has been more guilty than any other country in the world since the end of the Second World War. We've had the Korean War. I don't know what we were doing in Korea. We should have stuck to the Monroe Doctrine, where President Monroe told us we should only concentrate on the defense of our home country and North and South America. And interestingly enough, we've never been attacked in our whole history on our own land. So I wrote this book to try to make everybody happier. I hope it makes a small contribution, but I know it has, because one of the Fortune 100 CEOs has sent out 1,000 copies, and he said he never got such a great response. Long after he gives them this gift, normally if he gets a thank you after he sends them the gift, any gift, he sends out thousands of gifts a year. He's happy if he gets a call saying thank you, I really appreciate it. But rarely, if ever, does he get a call during a year following his sending the gift that they're thanking him for the joy and also he himself says he walked over to his two boys and his wife who were watching TV and said, "I want to read you something. My book has 365 pages, one page for every day of the year to lift your spirits, to tell you some jokes, put a smile on your face." So I know how compelling it is, because I've offered the best deal of anybody. On TV, if they offer you a pharmaceutical product or any product and they want to convince you to buy it, they say, if you're not happy with it, if you're not elated with it, you can send back the jar or the purchase slip, whatever, and we'll be glad to refund your money, which is a good deal, and a lot of people respond to that. My deal is even better. I say, because I've had this out as an offer since the book has been published, and I haven't had one taker, I say, not only will I return your purchase price, but if you send me a purchase slip, you can keep the book, and I'll send you double of what you paid. So you can wind up with a profit as long as you don't buy 50 books and make me pay double the purchase price on 50 books. So I'm glad it's fulfilling some role, and I like all of you, as you are very special, and Jeffrey as well, who's very, very special. I'm delighted that he's agreed to join us today. So without further ado, I still make that offer. If you buy the book and you're not elated with it, send me the purchase slip. You can keep the book, and I'll send you double your money back. So without further ado, enough about happiness. Let's get to misery.
Well, you got 365 pages, one for each day. So you could do a Daf Yomi page, and you could do a page in your book.
Right. And interestingly enough, of all the people I met during my career, Jeffrey was very active in producing Jewish theater, supported the effort, produced great shows. He has the best Yiddish capacity of anybody I ever met, other than maybe somebody that recently arrived from Europe. And I enjoy his Yiddish. And he always reminds me, when I listen to him, of Colin Powell, who speaks a perfect Yiddish. And nobody could ever figure out, how does Colin Powell from the Bronx speak such good Yiddish? I thought he got it from Jeffrey Wiesenfeld. But it turns out he lived in the Bronx. He worked in a hardware store that was owned by a Jewish immigrant. And all the customers that came to that store were Jewish old ladies mostly, that spoke only Yiddish. So Colin Powell learned to speak Yiddish. As a matter of fact, he gives this owner of this hardware store a lot of credit because he says when he finished working for this immigrant a number of years, when he graduated high school, he said he asked if he could come back to work for him. He wanted to make a career out of working for this gentleman. And the owner said, Colin, you got a lot more on the ball. You should go to college. And he said that was his inspiration for going to college and moving up into the world, where he became head of the Defense Department and Secretary of State. So without further ado, let me get Jeffrey, his wisdom injected into this program. And Len Carter is with us today, too.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey, if you could just move a couple inches to your right, just so that you're a little better centered in the... That's better. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So we've got a lot of issues to talk about on the big picture, sort of countrywide issue. We could also drill down and talk a little about issues affecting our state and our city. But let's start with the probably most topical, which is what's going on in Washington and the 2024 presidential race. So we'll start off, Mr. Wiesenfeld. What would you, just big picture question, how would you compare Donald Trump's legacy in office compared to President Biden's legacy in office?
Well, first, lest anybody think that I'm some big Trumper, I want to make clear, when let's be honest with each other. When we saw the debate last week, most of us who are level-headed recognized that it's quite troublesome that these two people are the very best that we can put forward as potential candidates for president. That said, we have to select from what's available. We're right now, everyone always believes they live in the most critical era. But in the same manner in which the Jewish people now, worldwide and including the United States, are living in the single most precarious era since the end of the Holocaust, I think America is at a crossroads right now. A situation has developed here which began with Obama, who took the country to a very different direction, not a very good one. Identity politics became the number one concern. It's how people are chosen in many instances in government and in industry and in education and even in medicine. And policies which created an enormous amount of waste in the country and to an unprecedented extent. Immigration uncontrolled with open borders, crime tolerated, crime dismissed, with charges dismissed against overwhelming numbers of defendants, just an overall decline in the country. I do agree with President Trump when he talks about the loss of respect for America, and it's not because of his uncouth manner. It's because our enemies smell weakness. The mullahs in Iran and the former Soviets, the Russians and the Chinese, we're just not in a good position. Clearly, if you put aside Trump's manner, which bothers many, and I get it, you have to worry about substance over style. Biden may be a little bit more polite. There are other things we can talk about in relation to his candidacy, but clearly the country was better off, and the policies of the Trump administration were far superior. Now, when people talk to me, oh, how can you support Trump? Trump is Hitler. This is the typical Jewish Democratic response. And I can say that as a former Democrat. Trump is Hitler. He'll take away our freedoms. He'll do this. He'll do that. I say, you know what? Let's assume both of these potential presidents who are either over or approaching the age of 80 are elderly. Fine. Let's look at who really is going to run the country. Go down the list. You see the cabinet of Biden, half of it is a freak show. You ask yourself, would you rather have Mike Pompeo or would you rather have Anthony Blinken? Would you rather have Secretary Holman running Homeland Security and the border? Or would you rather have Mayorkas? And we can go down the line. We can go down the line. Many, if not most, of Trump's people were far superior in their manner of administration of this country than Biden, who has many people placed there to create this religion called diversity. I'm not opposed to diversity, but merit has to be part of that diversity. And therefore, for those reasons and many others, it's clear that what was going on here 4 or 5 years ago, with the exception of January 6th, yes, with the exception of January 6th, is far superior to what we have now.
Morty, would you agree with that?
I'm not sure what part of what we have now it's superior to. I can't think of, and this goes in line with the fact that Trump was one of my favorite guys. He was a very good friend of mine. I admired him. I was asked to introduce him when he was being honored by the, what was the name of the
Freedom's Foundation.
The Freedom Foundation which was established by Dwight D. Eisenhower, and they were honoring him in Philadelphia. And I was on the board of that organization, and I agreed to go to Philadelphia and introduce Donald. And at that time, I really admired him because he did a lot of good things. One of the most impressive was after everybody failed with the ice skating rink in Central Park, all the builders and all the different people that the mayors and the governors were successful in recruiting to do the job, Donald got it done. And I said he built the most amazing buildings in New York, throughout the world. He really was an accomplished guy, and I paid that compliment to him. I was so generous with my praise that at the end of the, when I finished, he came up and kissed me on both cheeks. He's not European, but it was very affectionate, and hugged me and said thank you. And at that time, he was not married. So he was there with a supermodel, beautiful woman. And she came up and kissed me on the cheeks and said thank you. And couldn't wait to get Donald back at the hotel. But anyway, he was always very generous. When he'd introduce me, he'd say, Morty Davis, the biggest guy on Wall Street, the best, all kind of compliments way beyond anything I deserved. But I appreciated that. But he changed a lot, and now he frightens me, because I think, notwithstanding any good things he may have done, and the one thing I really appreciate that he had done, every president for the last 6 or 7 had on their platform that they were going to move. Congress actually endorsed that and voted for it. They would move the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. It was on their agenda. And every time some leading Jewish person or some leading congressman would say, well, what about it? You promised to do it. And they always said, now's not a good time. It was never a good time. And Trump, like his tendency to do, whatever he says he's going to do, he does, for better or worse. So he did it, and I admire the guts that he showed in introducing that. It didn't create any problems. The time was not terrible because it befriended some of the Arab countries and Muslim countries to Israel. He served the good purpose. So I loved him, but he's had a conversion that people forget that he was a backer of Bill Clinton, of Hillary Clinton. He contributed many dollars to them. He was pro-choice. He was pro-universal health coverage. And now he's gone to the other extreme. But what frightens me the most is that January 6th, as you pointed out, indicated that if he had his choice, we probably would never have another election. When he's asked, would you back, whoever wins the election? He's honest. He said, with Hillary, he said, absolutely. When the host asked him, would you back the winner? And he said, absolutely, as long as I was the winner. And he said that recently. And some of his fanatic followers or zealot followers, including the one black senator,
Tim Scott.
What's his name?
Tim Scott.
Tim Scott, yeah, from South Carolina, I think. Tim Scott, who is a potential vice presidential appointee of Trump, should Trump get elected. When asked during an interview, would you back the winner? He said, of course. So if somebody else won, he said, well, that's a hypothetical. That'll never happen because Trump is going to win. So of course I'm going to back the winner. So that's what frightens me. That he could. This could be the last election we ever have.
These, I hear these things from a lot of Jewish Democrats. I don't know if we're censored here, but I think it's a bunch of bull. It's a bunch of bull. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you, it's very interesting. First of all,
Jeffrey, was January 6th a bunch of bull when he told?
No. Hang on.
When he told Pence not to do what the constitutional job that he was supposed to do.
Let's be. First of all, there's absolutely no question that many hundreds of those people who created that violence and went into the Capitol are suffering deservedly enormous sentences and penalties. But every time something goes wrong in a city with a cop or something like that, or the revered George Floyd, that wonderful man who held a gun to the belly of his pregnant girlfriend, and yes, he was unjustifiably strangled or denied help by a cop, but he was on drugs anyway, so he might have died anyhow. But that said, every time that happens, fires, looting, murder, mayhem throughout the cities, district attorneys who don't punish anyone. And let me tell you, Morty, when people talk about Trump and Hitler and all of this nonsense, it really gets my gut. My wife and I are the children of 4 Holocaust survivors. We know what a Hitler is. Now, Trump is uncouth, but let me also tell you, there was absolutely cheating in the election of 2020, as there is in every election. I just don't agree with Trump that there was enough to have made the difference in the election. And frankly, if I were asked by him, which I'm not, I would tell him that the way he treated Vice President Pence, who was loyal to him and a real institutionalist and a good man, was disgraceful. Disgraceful. But that said, I have to look at what's today the same way many Jewish leaders, including Serge Klarsfeld, who was the Nazi hunter who succeeded Simon Wiesenthal, He said in France just a few days ago, who would believe that I would support the National Rally, the right-wingers of France? And of course, they didn't win the mandate that they wanted because Macron made a contract with the left at the last minute, and the National Rally lost. And why did they support the National Rally? Because the Muslim immigration to France is resulting in the persecution of the Jewish people, and they're trying to undo the French Republic. Because Muslims are okay like any other minority until they reach a critical mass. Unfortunately, unlike the Reformations, which went through Christendom and Judaism, they have this triumphalist strain. They have to be in charge. So when they reach a certain percentage, they have to triumph. They have to take over. And they've done that with many European capitals. The only countries that don't have that problem, by the way, are the Czechs, the Poles, and the Hungarians, because they severely restrict or prevent Muslim immigration because they feel it's a clash of civilization. So why am I saying all this? Because this is an exaggerated feeling about Trump. Trump is not going to end democracy. It's a bunch of bull. It's a purposeful statement to create a situation. Why not the fear of the law and disorder? Morty, your firm is located in New York City. Let me tell you something. My wife and I still maintain a small apartment that I got years ago because I didn't want to commute every day, and I'd have late night client meetings, so I'd stay in Manhattan. We still have that apartment. I stay there sometimes. Let me tell you, in one of the finest streets on the Upper East Side, I'm an old-time New Yorker. You know what I like to do? I like to go out winter or summer. I go out at 6:30 in the morning, and I go to the guy on the corner, the Arab guy who's selling the coffee and the rolls, and I'll get a buttered roll, a Kaiser roll, and a cup of coffee. And I'll walk up the street till I finish the coffee and the roll, and I'll go upstairs, do a little exercise, and go to work. Well, a couple of months ago, there's a Dwayne Reed under my building. And a guy is in a struggle with the security guard and the manager, and he's carrying a massive sack of goods that he stole. And the security guard is struggling, and in exasperation, the guy gets away, and the manager, I know him, and I say, Doug, what? He says, I'm really scared. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm afraid like they'll do like many of the other stores. It's too much theft. They're going to close us down. We'll lose the jobs here. This is what's going. And you think if that guy is caught, they're going to punish him? No. The district attorney bragged? No. The anti-Semitic crimes against the Jewish people in Colombia and elsewhere? He dismissed all the charges. The people are fed up. And Trump has said, if you're not a citizen of this country and you're demonstrating on the streets for Hamas or other known terrorist entities, we're going to deport you. That's a Hitler? You come to this privileged country, you should be a good citizen. We have many people here on student visas and who are non-resident aliens and all kinds of things, and they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Not to mention the citizenry that burns the American flag and stands with the Palestinian flag and stands with Hamas. That's the threat. And you know why that's the threat? Because it's big. The ADL has been busy for a half a century collecting donations. And they were busy fighting 60 nutcases in Charlottesville, neo-Nazis, and another 24 neo-Nazis in Idaho. While the left, the anti-Semites on the left, run every university except YU. Every university. They're embedded in the corporations with the DEI, which is very harmful to the Jewish people. On the streets, the district attorneys, the governments, this is the first time, by the way, that one of these vicious anti-Semites from the left, Bowman, is being thrown out. But other than that, they elect more of them locally in the state Senate, in the Assembly, in the legislatures around the country. Every election, the Democrats pick up more anti-Semites. And Schumer is so afraid of them, that phony, calls himself the showman. So he goes and gives a speech in the Congress. We got to get rid of Netanyahu and have an election before Israel goes to hell. Who the hell are you? When you have anti-Semites in the Democratic Party, did you ever hear Schumer say anything about them? Did he ever say a word about Bowman or AOC? So what I'm saying to you, Morty, is when we talk about what we want in this country, we have to choose from what's being put forward. We don't have the choice of a third party. It's either Trump or Biden. Now, if I were a Democrat and I'm voting for Biden, I'm not really voting for Biden. See, I'm talking to you. You know what's going on. Biden loses his train of thought. I have nothing against the man personally, by the way. I'll tell you a story in a little while. It's funny about me and Biden, but that's not right now. I just want to make the point. We know, actuarially speaking, based on what we see, there is no way on earth that Biden can serve 4 years. So I wouldn't support him now anyway versus Trump, because I believe the Democrats, for what they've done to this country the last several years with the things that I described to you and the disorder of the law, that they must be punished. It's like Ed Koch used to say, they must be punished. The people voted against me, now the people must suffer. That's what Ed Koch used to say. The people must punish the Democrats. We need, because we'll get some equilibrium. We've gone too far to the left. And the way America should work is that when the pendulum is too far one way, it's got to go back. It's gone too far. But I'm saying besides the point, Biden will not be able to serve 4 years. Then you'll have Kamala Harris. Now, you can't take that seriously, Morty. Come on, you're a businessman. If you were looking for someone to run a company, the United States is a pretty big company. Would you hire Kamala Harris to be the CEO of a major corporation like GM? Would you? I wouldn't hire her to be president. That's who you're going to get. You're not really going to get Biden.
Jeffrey, you're so brilliant. I find it very hard to disagree with you. You're a great lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer. My mother said I should have been a lawyer.
If you were a lawyer presenting a case, you make a great case. I don't think Kamala is prepared for that role. I've nothing against her, but I've never heard her make a really.
She laughs well, so she could laugh at your jokes.
Giggles.
She laughs good.
She brings a good sense of humor to a sense of joy, seemingly, to the role. So it's a tough choice, you know.
I agree with you. I'm not one of these gung-ho people saying, I love Trump. I'm just saying we also owe him some gratitude. Listen, he recognized the Golan Heights on behalf of the United States government. They could say whatever they want, but Israel's never giving back the Golan. And hopefully Israel, they're about to have a horrible war in the north. God knows how many brethren and sisters we're going to lose in Israel. But I hope Israel will take a few kilometers in the north, a few kilometers in the south, and make demilitarized zones so that the border is pushed back, because they can't survive like this. And if people can't go back to their homes, there's no Israel. They've already lost 20% of their country by people not living near the two borders. And even if it takes a half a century, maybe in the future, some other Donald Trump will come along and recognize those new borders, the way he did Golan. So it wasn't just Jerusalem. It was the Golan Heights also. He did a lot for us in the Abraham Accords. You know, the Jews tend to be ingrates. It's very interesting. It's funny that most Jews, you have some good Jews in public office like Gottheimer. You have a few good ones, but not too many. A lot of times the Gentiles do better for us. Remember Al D'Amato? Yeah, he asked you for a lot of money, but he did a lot of good things for Israel. You know that. And I don't even have to talk about Pataki. Where do you find an Ed Koch today? Ed Koch was a rare fighter for Jews in Israel. Rare. You don't get too many people like that. Very few. You're going to rely on Nadler? You're going to rely on Schumer? You're going to rely on Goldman? The only two people, by the way, who stood up to Biden openly when he was withholding the bombs for Israel that they needed. There were two people. My congressman was a Democrat, Tom Suozzi, and Richie Torres, black Hispanic congressman from the South Bronx. Not the Jews, two Goyim. Democrats, yes. So I say there are exceptions. And this Fetterman has been a great surprise, the senator from, who would have believed he'd be such a hero of the Jewish people? I wouldn't have believed it. He looked like some big lefty. And then people said, oh, we thought you'd be a lefty. He says, I'm not a lefty just because I wear a hoodie. I'm just a senator with a hoodie. I'm not a lefty. But he surprised us. You know, we have a joke. We have a joke, lahavdil. We say, excuse me, that Fetterman is the first human being ever to be cured by a stroke. And then the stroke went to Chuck Schumer.
Well, you know, if I were Trump, I believe he could win in a landslide. All he has to do, because this was my reaction, the minute I turned on the debate and Biden started speaking, I said, there's no way I could ever vote for this guy for president because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's out of touch. And so it's a miracle that he's still favored by so many people. And he says it was an incident. Even today, they asked him, what happens if suddenly there's an attack by the Russians or the Chinese or some other misbehaved country, and they get word at the White House, and Biden is in one of these moods or under the influence of whatever he was on, and they say, well, his wife could handle it, Mrs. Biden could handle it, or that his PR woman.
But that's why it's also important who a president has on their team. Listen, we had people who know the reality. General Kellogg, you had Mike Pompeo. These people, you know, I hate to say it, you know, Blinken may be a nice fellow, plays a nice guitar and so on, but he's like a deer in the headlights. He doesn't fully grasp the evil of what we're dealing with. You know, these mullahs, you know, Trump had them strangulated. They had no money. And here we're giving them billions, and I don't care if it's their money or not. Why are we releasing billions of dollars to the Iranians? And you know, they don't like that Netanyahu will come to speak here. Look, the reason they hate Netanyahu is because he, you know, they wanted to sell that Iran deal under Obama. And Netanyahu told the truth about the deficiencies in the deal. And they resented him for it. Because he didn't come here because he wanted just to make Obama look bad. He was there to beg mercy for the Jewish people. These people want to exterminate us, and they have the means. And he exposed it. So, again, it's not, people should understand, you don't have to love Trump, and you don't have to hate Biden. You don't have to hate either of them. But you have to think about what people do each of them bring to the table. Who is running the store for them? Because a president, really, at that age, let's be honest, either one of them, one can be more forceful than the other, as Trump is. But a president, at the end of the day, doesn't know what's going on every day at the ground level. He should know as much as possible. But you have to have good people operating each division. The divisions being the various cabinet departments.
So, along with the president comes policy, economic, foreign policy, domestic, whatever that may be. So, let's talk about some of Trump's intended policies if elected and whether or not you think they would be good for America. Lowering taxes further for individuals and corporations, more tariffs on imports, rolling back regulations, and, as he likes to say, drill, baby, drill.
Well,
so you get Trump, you get those policies. Do you think those
are every one of those items has an opposite? Instead of just asking me about lower taxes, I happen to believe that they should not tamper with tax cuts that have helped. I think a person, Morty Davis lives in New York, as do I. I presume because Morty was his own CEO that he did better in me than life, because I spent half of my life in government. I only spent half on Wall Street. Morty's been on Wall Street forever. So Morty, unless he has good tax deductions, he's at the top rate, which is 39 and change, nearly 40%. He pays probably the top rate in New York, minus whatever deductions he has. That takes him to 51%. And he has to thank God that his domicile is not in the five boroughs, because if it was in five boroughs, he pays another 4%. So he would be giving 60 cents. He's already giving, if he lived in Manhattan, 60 cents of every dollar to the government. Why should that be high? Should it be 65? How many people can we afford to lose from New York to Palm Beach? I mean, my wife and I have a small apartment in Palm Beach. We're probably the poorest people on Palm Beach Island, which is okay. But let me tell you, every neighbor is a transplanted, wealthy New Yorker living in these houses that I've never seen in my life. Even Beverly Hills doesn't have houses like Palm Beach. And they left, and they took their taxes with them, like that idiot de Blasio said, well, we don't care if people leave New York, because there'll always be more people coming to New York. The problem is the people with the money are leaving, and the people who need money are coming. So I wouldn't raise, but yet when you ask the question, he wants lower taxes. It's not going to get him as low as he would like, but he will probably get the extension on the existing tax cuts from 2017. But the corollary, the opposite to what you're asking, is if you were asking Biden or someone who advocates for Biden, would you say, tell us why you need more taxes? Because they want more taxes. That's very clear. Tariffs on imports, we're clearly being cheated by the Chinese for decades. The question is how high those tariffs should be. You don't want a tariff war, so any idea can't be extreme. Rolling back regulations, you shouldn't roll back regulations that give license to evildoers or lawbreakers. But clearly there's a bureaucracy that has harmed business. As far as drill baby drill, I have to laugh. He's not totally off the mark when Trump talks about this green scam. You know, we were completely energy independent, and if things were so good the way they're handling it now in terms of the energy posture, why is it that we read that Biden is about to release millions and millions of gallons of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in order to lower gas prices in advance of the election? Come on. Come on. We wouldn't have to lower prices or release, excuse me, from our petroleum reserve if the prices weren't as high as they are now, and were not during the time that Trump was president. Uh, you want to move to a greener, quote unquote, economy over time. But the way they're pushing it with the drastic schedule, let me give you an example, first of all. We know now, let me ask something. If I need my car in Florida for a couple of weeks, you think I'm a schmuck? I'm going to drive an electric car to Florida? Would you want your daughter to drive an electric car to Florida and have to figure out where to power it up along the way, which you'd have to do at least 4 times to go 1,600 miles, right? And you have to sit. And if some of those times happen to be in the dark, which they will be because you're going in the winter, and you can't make sure that you get power every day at 12, and you don't want to take 5 days to get there. You want to get there at least in 2 days, worse 3. So you have to figure out where you're going to get it. You have to pay for it. You may have a queue there. You may have to wait. You want your daughter sitting there at night. The point is, this idea has to develop further. Until people can really go a great distance with electric cars, it's a far. You know what it is? I have friends around here in Great Neck who have electric cars. It's a status symbol. They use it to power, to tool around the neighborhood. And then they plug it in. They live in houses. I live in an apartment here now. I sold my house. So they have houses and they plug it in. It's very nice, very quiet, it's very pleasant. And they use it to go here, maybe to go a little further out on Long Island. But you can't. But if they have to travel somewhere serious, and it's not by plane, and they have to drive interstate, that car goes in the garage and they take the fossil car. They take the fossil car. That's what they do. The fossil fuel car. So all of this And the other thing, you don't want to live in Minnesota in the winter and have an electric car. The car freezes up, it can't start. They don't work in the cold weather. There's a lot of work that has to be done on this technology. They're trying to push everyone into the green. They say the world's going to end in 5 years if we don't do it now because the temperature's rising. We heard all of this stuff. It has to be done at a pace that people will want to buy the technology, not to have it as a status symbol. Then you're forcing people into this situation. Nobody wants to be stuck somewhere with an electric car. But it's right now, it's a local phenomenon. It's very nice. It can keep you around, wherever you. And by the way, in many metropolises, it's not yet practical. It's not possible with the density of New York to have enough charges for everyone would have an electric car. It's just something that they're pushing that they're not ready for yet.
Jeffrey, you're still by Washington's and the candidates we have on board now. You're a young whippersnapper. So why don't you declare it? This is a good time. We need somebody to run for president who's got your energy and your wisdom.
Congress came up many times, but I know. Yeah, well, Congress came up.
You're over 35, right?
I'm 66. I'm 66.
And you were born in the United States, right?
Yeah, of course. Look,
so you qualify.
Yeah, and the Shane's good. Yeah, I'll be like Harold Stassen. Remember Harold Stassen? He ran. Look, Congress came up many times, but the reason I decided not to do it, first of all, it's one thing if you're Trump and you're wealthy, and you can spout what you believe and get away with. It's very hard on the congressional level to do that, and they'll dissect everything you say. And to me, it's obvious what's happening with radical Islam, and I speak about that. When Koch was speaking about these things, most of the time he was always a proud Jew and pro-Israel, but in terms of the threat of radical Islam and things like that, or I don't know if you've ever seen Ed's tombstone. He quotes Daniel Pearl, and he says, "My mother was a Jew, my father was a Jew, I am a Jew." And he says the words of Daniel Pearl as he was murdered by an Islamic terrorist. That's on his mitzvah, on his tombstone. But Ed Koch didn't really start to speak that way until he was retired from the mayoralty. So if I were running for Congress, and you get everything you can pull up on Google, and they'll have all these quotes, I'll have all kinds of trouble. The Council on American Islamic Relations. By the way, I wouldn't give a damn what they think, because I believe what I believe and I put it out there. I really don't care. But the problem is, if I'm running for a position where the public is going to pay my salary, those people have a voice and they'll screw me. I have the freedom to do what I want, the same way you do this show, this podcast. I write columns. I'm on the radio a lot. I can say what I believe, and if they don't like it, they can go whistle Dixie. You see, when you run for Congress, you're pretty much restricted. The kinds of people who went as far as they can go. You remember what they did to the great Congressman Peter King when he had hearings on Islamic extremism in America, and he had witnesses, and he had good Muslim. There were a few good Muslims who testified. They gave him hell. You're an Islamophobic, this and that. They made his life miserable. But Peter, thank God for him, he lives in a district with a lot of Catholics. See, I live in a district with a lot of Jews. For someone like me to run for office where there's a lot of Jews, that's not a good way to run for office. See, I could be king of the goyim. If I want to live in Knoxville, Kentucky, I could be a congressman the following year, no problem. But when you run with the Jews, you got Great Neck is now all red. It's mostly Republican because you have Orthodox Ashkenazim, they're very conservative here, and of course the Persians. But then you go to 2 towns over to Port Washington, it's all lefty Jews over there. The district as a whole, it's kind of 50-50 conservative Jews and lefty Jews. I'm talking politically. So that would be very chancy for me. And I don't need to get aggravated. Whatever I do, I want to win.
You're doing a good job, but I don't know why you're defending the Muslims.
I'm not defending them. Who's defending?
No, you say that they're good. They're not good.
No. I
They,
said there were some good ones that tested, some good people like the fellow named Zudi Jasser. There's an Islamic reform group, but the problem. Let me tell you the problem we have in this country that the Jews don't understand. They don't understand the imams and the Muslims overwhelmingly. They hate Israel. They hate the Jewish people. I'm not Islamophobic. I just know the truth because how do I know? I read the Pew surveys. The Pew surveys are unbiased. And the Pew surveys, they get these numbers, and the numbers are horrible. But I want to tell you what Jews ought to worry about. The left now controls a lot of the public discourse and is a grave danger to the Jewish welcome in America. Because as I said, while everyone's worried about the few right wingers who are dangerous and we have to harden our targets against them. You could have a crazy right wing guy, will come and shoot up a shul, God forbid. We know that. But they don't run the country and they're looked at as losers. But the left, they're in public office, they're in the corporations, they're in education, in every university. It's down beyond the high school level, it's down at the junior high level. The New York City Board of Education can't control these anti-Semites now in the schools. So we have a big problem. But here's the real challenge for American Jews. You have close to 4 million Muslims in America. You have about 5 million Jews in America. Of the 5 million Jews, about 2 million plus, 2.25 million, are affiliated, meaning they belong to Reform, Conservative, or Orthodox synagogues. 2 million out of the 5. But of the 2 million, about 400,000 or 500,000 really don't benefit us in the political discourse advocating for Israel. They're Haredim, they're worried about themselves, their social programs, the Hasidim, except for Chabad, they're more involved. But generally, so you got 1.5 million hardcore Jews like Morty Davis and Jeff and your partner over there as well. About 1.5 million. But guess what? Those 4 million Muslims, they're all committed. They're all committed to what they call the Ummah, the great Islamic worldwide community. They're committed. So we really are just 1.5 million Jews trying to carry all this water. And we Jews do have some power because the Jews have always been active politically. And they account for more of the political money amongst Republicans and Democrats than any other group per capita. But they have to use it well. They have to use it well, and they don't. They give to parties whether they're with them or not. Sometimes in a cycle, you might have an election cycle where you have to punish a particular party, like right now. But you see, that's the problem.
Jeffrey, you're making the United States as if the Jewish people are so important. They should make policy, and we should follow what the Jewish people. That's nonsense. The Jewish people make a contribution. They're an important people, much more important than their numbers should indicate. We shouldn't even count. We're like, out of 7 billion, we have 14 million. And that's if you count everybody who's intermarried, who's assimilated.
Yes.
So we're nothing. And we make such a great impact on the world. But instead of taking that position, we don't need to defend it in terms of Jews. Iran says Israel's the little Satan, and the United States has the big giant Satan. The United States is being punished by if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it's the United States that's more at risk than anybody. So, and in terms of Muslims, it's the only people that every single day they kill each other. They don't kill Christians or Jews. They're killing Shiites. The Shiites are killing the Sunnis are killing the Shia, because for some reason, some nephew of Muhammad is followed by some of them, and another nephew is followed by a different segment. So they're vicious. Hamas has in their what do you call it?
The charter, the charter.
Charter, not to get the state for the Palestinians or for the Arabs or for the Muslims. It's to wipe out Israel and kill all the Jews. They say that in their charter. So how could you deal with, it aggravates the hell out of me when I see people that I admire, that I think a great deal of like Thomas Friedman and our Secretary of State Blinken.
Well, I don't think anything of Thomas Friedman, except very malign feelings for him, Peter Beinart, all these kinds of crazy people.
But he's very brilliant. He's a great writer. He's won many Pulitzer Prizes. But Thomas Friedman, Blinken, what's his name? Also, very bright guy. He's head of the Council for Foreign Advisors. His name is Haas.
Haas, yeah.
Haas. These three people, early on, have written, the way to solve this problem is just give the Palestinians their own state. They are so naive. They're so out of it. Over 75 years, Israel's made so many gestures, more than gestures. They've given back the Sinai to the Egyptians. They've given back, had a conflict with Lebanon about some
the oil field, yeah, all of that.
A fight over some adjacent territory. Israel gave it back without a fight. They gave, Gaza without any fight. They had to send in IDFs, Israeli Defense Forces, to kick out Jewish people that had businesses there and had lives there, just to turn it over to the Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims. And in the 75 years, the Palestinians have gotten multiple offers that, first of all, in 75 and 50, 48, 47, the same time that Israel was offered a state in its home, traditional home for centuries, the Palestinians were offered a big piece of land, maybe bigger than Israel. And they didn't even come back with a counteroffer. They could have contacted the UN and said, well, okay, we'll buy into that if you give us additional land or something. That was the first time. In 67, they started a war, all these Muslim countries, Arab countries, against Israel, because they wanted the rest of it. Now what they want the borders moved to 67. They want to retain or recapture what they had before, when they controlled Jerusalem, and Christians and Jews couldn't go to their holy sites or have synagogues or churches. They controlled the whole western part of Israel. So in 75 years, they haven't made a gesture that they're interested in the state, that they're willing to accept it. And Israel's made many offers. Bill Clinton said one of his biggest disappointments of his administration, of his lack of achievements, was when he put Barack together with Arafat, and Arafat was offered 95% of what he was looking for. And instead of even making a counteroffer or renegotiating or trying to make he left and he started an intifada. So there's never been a time in 75 years that they've accepted even the beginning of a state. All they want is the complete elimination of Israel. As many of them have already done on their maps, they don't show in Israel. So, but for guys like, Tom Friedman, and they're well-meaning, but to say that their way to solve this problem is as if they didn't live through these 75 years and all these significant events to say that they're naive, they're dreamers. They don't face reality. So we have to make it more than a Jewish issue. It's not a Jewish issue. Just like Floyd is not a given people's issue. Floyd, a cop who was in jail today for holding Floyd down, he's got a long sentence, and he was supposed to be sentenced providing it's without a reasonable doubt. And there were experts that came along and said they believed that Floyd died not because he was held down or 10 minutes of being held down, but because he was on drugs or because he was sick. So to make a hero out of one of the guys that doesn't deserve it, there are a lot of African Americans deserve to be heroes. But
the point of the George Floyd story is that whether police are at fault or not at fault, any such incident repeatedly results in massive property damage around the country in the form of rioting, and looting, and what I call it unlegislated reparations. I call it unlegislated reparations, and sometimes murders and assaults and beatings and fires and all kinds of things. And these people by the thousands are not prosecuted. They're not prosecuted. And you contrast that with the lengthy but deserved sentences that the January 6th rioters got. Anyone who invaded federal property, especially the Capitol, and tried to impede government administration should serve a harsh term, and they do.
Well, they're not.
But on a day-to-day basis,
January 6th was an insurrection.
Yeah, but every day
instituted by the United States government.
Right, but every day, I understand, but every day we live through this kind of threat in our cities to our personal safety throughout the country. Every day we live through things like that.
African Americans hardly realize, mostly don't realize, that the biggest backers of the African Americans have been the Jewish people. They started the NAACP.
This is, by the way,
Jewish lawyers set it up.
This is another trend.
You remember the three names that two of them were Jewish.
Yeah, Goodman, Schwerner, Cheney. Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. Look, the point of that is very simple. The Jews have, let me put it this way. The conservative reform movements grew in this country, in a manner that the rabbinic authorities for them tried to create enthusiasm because the pews were becoming empty by the 1960s. So they created this social justice nonsense. They took the Aleinu prayer, which just says, improve the world by proclaiming God's sovereignty. And they created, abortion rights, whale rights, tikkun olam, all kinds of nice things. And tikkun olam became the social justice alternative religion. The problem is it poisoned authentic Judaism, and Jews started doing things for people to do tikkun olam for other people without expecting reciprocity means you're an idiot. The grandparents of these young blacks that we were in solidarity with in the civil rights movement are now the purveyors of hefty doses of black anti-Semitism, like Bowman and Cory Bush and all of these masses who hate Jews gratuitously, even though we were the only white people that stood up in numbers for them. So I say always to groups like the Jewish Federations and the JCRCs, you want to help other people, it has to be understood that it has to be reciprocal. And after October 7th, very few stood with us. The left was gone. The Republicans came out strong. There were
No.
exceptions, like I told, like Richie Torres and Fetterman, but overwhelmingly, they didn't stand with us. They took a hike, and the Republicans stand with us, and the Speaker of the House and this one and that one. They don't know what to do with these
Yeah,
without these good Christians. We'd be dead in this country. We'd be
yeah.
dead here because we'd be at the hands of the left.
The Christians are far more supportive.
And unfortunately, right now, the Democratic Party gives the heft to the left. And I don't think we're going to save. I think the trend, unfortunately, and this is going to upset you because you're an optimist. The trend is not a good one for Jews in America right now. It's not a good trend, and if they permit this continued excessive Muslim integration, the leftist Islamic alliance will be as bad for us as the Jews of Paris or Brussels or Malmo or anywhere else in Europe. That's just the way it is. There's a reason that Jews are living a safer life in the Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary. It's actually safer to be a Jew with a yarmulke walking right now in Budapest than in Paris. Now, if you're a rich Jew and you live in Paris near the Arc de Triomphe, all right, you can get by. But if you're a middle-class Jew and you live in neighborhoods like the Sephardim who live with some of these North Africans, they could take a Holocaust survivor, throw her off the roof. They burned to death this young boy. This is what's happening now. This is real. So the left is the danger. It's monolithic. It's big. It's dangerous for us. And they show they're not our friends. It showed they're not our friends. And frankly, I don't think as a community the Jews show sufficient gratitude to the good Christians of this country who stand with them against Islamic extremism and the hard left. I don't think they show enough gratitude.
They're anti-American, not only anti-Jew. And the Jews are in trouble, not only in the United States right now, but throughout the world.
Well, those same people burn the American flag in the street. You know.
Right. If you didn't know better, you would think that Israel attacked Hamas instead of the other way around on October 7th. All of the criticism of the World Court, supposedly a neutral judge, say Israel has to stop killing. It's outrageous. There's never been another war where they said the country that was attacked has to stop fighting, has to be careful to not hurt anybody that's not a military person. Only Israel, which is incidentally the one country that has rules to warn people, to notify civilians, to move out before they bomb. It's unbelievable. It's in globalish. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for being a guest. You were terrific. You almost converted me into a Trump voter. Not quite.
By the way, it's very hard to be a Democrat where you live. You know, you live in the 5 towns, right?
What do you mean? We had this great guy who was thrown out of Congress who lied. You know, the guy, what was his name?
No, I had that guy, Santos.
What's his name?
I had him, Santos. He was up here.
We had him too.
How did you have? Where do you live? You live in 5 towns, aren't you?
Yeah.
I was.
He was my congressman.
Santos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The district went north to south.
Not
south. Wait, no, seriously, how far south did it go?
Not the Santos. Santos was my congressman.
That's what I'm saying, Santos. He was my congressman here in Great Neck until we got rid of him.
Right.
A real Michigan.
Thankfully.
No, I didn't know he came that far south. You are in the 5 towns, right?
I don't know. He was born in the 5 towns?
No, I meant you.
No, I wasn't born in the 5 towns.
No, but you live. You're in the 5 towns. Yeah, I didn't know he touched any part of the 5 towns at Michigan.
Born in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Me and the founder of what do you call it? What's the coffee place?
Starbucks.
What?
Starbucks.
Me and Howard Schultz.
Oh, you're from the Canarsie houses?
No, I was at Williamsburg.
Williamsburg.
But Howard Schultz was from the Canarsie.
Yeah,
right?
he was from the Canarsie houses.
Anyway, God bless you. Thank you for joining us. I love you to be a guest.
It was good to see you after all this time.
You had the time.
The flesh.
And if you decide to run for president, I promise to back you.
Yeah, Kleifschein. Yeah. Anyway, say hello to Roz.
Thank you. She passed away a
Oh,
few years ago,
I didn't know. When was that?
a little more than 3 years ago.
Oh, I didn't even know. How did I not know? I didn't know. Wow. Well,
It was a very painful experience,
yeah.
but
She was a very I remember she was a very classy lady.
yeah. How did she
Right?
get? How did she get stuck with me?
Uh,
God bless you.
okay,
You're
Tatala.
a classy guy, and thank you for making this a very special show. God bless you.
You too. All the best. Bye bye.